What is the most expensive mistake a sales leader can make? It's not losing an account, it is hiring the wrong sales rep. A bad sales hire can cost over $1.3 million in lost revenue and in wasted investment. And today I want to talk about why bad hires happen, the impact that they can create, and some solutions, what you can do to help make lasting hires, and also added bonus with less stress in the process. So first, let's break down the financial impact. Where do we get this number of over $1.3 million for one bad hire alone? So first, you have your direct cost and your indirect cost. So we'll first talk about the direct cost. You have your recruiting fees. You have onboarding, you have salary and benefits, and typically you're going to have that ramp up period where the new sales rep to the organization is not yet achieving their quota. So then you've got your lost revenue, your unmet sales quota for that first half of the year during the ramp up. And then you've got maybe a stalled pipeline and potentially even some lost accounts once you realize that you've made a bad hire. These are some of the signals, of course, pointing to that. And then what about your hidden drains? You want to factor those into leadership time invested in the bad hire. Typically, when you have the wrong person on the team, this can create morale damage across the team, and then also your some cultural disruption when they're not a good fit for the culture. So let's do the math, and let's just say to keep it simple that we hire a sales rep early to mid-level, and their base is $100,000 annually. So for your recruiter cost and fees, you're looking at about 25% of that, so $25,000. And then you have the interview time. If the leadership team invested about 25 hours in the interview process times around, give or take $100 per hour, then you've got $2,500. And then your onboarding and training, which may be around $5,000. And then you've got that first 6 months salary plus benefits over $60,000, $62,500. So you're already at $95,000 just for the hire and the onboarding. And this is before the rep is bringing any value financially to the organization. Now let's layer on the lost sales impact that can potentially happen when you've made a wrong hire. You've got missed quota, potentially that first year, let's say half of a $1 million target, so $500,000. And then typically it can take another 6 months to exit the wrong employee out of the organization. So then you've got the additional salary and benefits. So again, that's an additional $62,500. And then you've got client impact. So when you have the wrong employee in place, you could potentially lose accounts. So conservatively speaking, let's say 2 accounts valued at $50,000 annually. So then you've got another loss of around $100,000. So the total after 1 year of a bad sales hire, then we're at over $750,000. And then you're restarting the process. So then you've got to do the new hire recruiting and onboarding again, and then you're adding on again that $95,000 number. And then they've got their ramp up period again, that additional lost revenue likely for the first 6 months. So it's another loss of potentially $500,000 during their ramp up period. So when you add all of this up, you get $1 million, you get over $1.3 million in cost and in lost opportunity. So this is where we're getting that number. So I wanted to break that down to highlight the impact of a bad sales hire to an organization. The range can vary depending on the role, and of course can be different across industries. So we're talking about sales hires. But now let's look at why bad sales hires happen. And there are lots of examples and case studies on bad hires and why they happen. And what I find is that the reasons fall under 2 main umbrellas: communication and process. So ineffective or lack of communication, or same with the process, lack of process, or a rushed process. And the great thing about these big challenges is that we have control over the process and our communication. But before we get into the solutions, let's talk a little bit more about why the bad hires happen. And I think it's always important to dig into the root cause, because what happens when we identify the root cause, the real challenge, well, then the solution presents itself. We just do the opposite of the what's causing the problem. But Rushed hires, maybe you have a highly visible role and you need to backfill it, and so you feel like it's an urgent hire. You want to get, yes, you want to get the right person in place, but you also want to do it quickly. Or maybe you are building out a new team for a new division launch, or new division and product launch, and we want to quickly get boots on the ground. When we have a rush process and we skip steps, or the interview steps are inconsistent, then we can run into these challenges at creating an inefficient and ineffective process, where maybe we're not asking enough effective questions to really truly properly vet candidates. And then sometimes we focus, I've seen this happen a lot, we focus maybe too much on skill set, maybe contacts. A lot of times leaders are requiring contacts, and there's not anything necessarily wrong with that, but we want to remember also that it's important that we assess culture fit too. Not just is the employee what we're looking for culture wise, but is the company culture what the employee is looking for culture wise? Because if not, then they're not likely to stick around. And so then this can create turnover if we're not properly vetting for culture. And remember, chances are, if you wanted that employee based on their contacts and their wins on the board with the clients that you're looking to get in front of, other companies want them too. So if they're not happy in your company culture after they come on board, they're not likely to stick around, and they are likely to have a lot of other opportunities. And then falling under communication is failure to address red flags throughout the process. This one I see a lot too, when typically when there's turnover, there was a sign, there was a pause, a hesitation that the hiring manager had, and we always want to make sure that we dig deeper there. With that, I'll get to the solutions here in just a moment, but this one I see a lot: failure to address those red flags, hesitations, potential challenges, and concerns throughout the process. And then sometimes skipping reference checks. Sometimes employers may assume that the previous employer did the reference check. So that's another one that we want to, of course, make sure that we check these boxes. So what are the solutions? So we talked about the impact of a bad hire, how much it can cost your organization. And then when you think about if you're an organization that has multiple divisions, multiple teams, or multiple hires throughout the year and over time, this can really add up to negatively impacting the organization. And if the reasons why bad hires are happening are as simple as poor communication and a rush process, well, we have control, like I mentioned before, over our communication and over the process. So what are some things that we can do to help ensure that you attract more of the right fit candidates from the start of the process, so that your leadership team is not investing time with the wrong candidates from the very start? You want to tell the story of the role, the day in the life, the good, the bad, the things that details that we're still figuring out. But you want to share the story of the role and also the company mission and culture as accurately as possible. Now, sometimes maybe it's a startup organization, maybe it's a new role, and sometimes we're still figuring out some of the details, and we need to go ahead and get boots on the ground and figure out and adjust as we go. That happens some of the time, and that can be okay, and you can still have a successful hire. But as much as possible, get some of the clear, some of the really key details that are going to be important to the candidates clear up front, and make sure that the leadership team and your recruiter are all aligned on what the story of the role is. And so, because the story that we tell is going to determine who we attract. Think about when you pick up a book and read the back cover when deciding to get the book. Hopefully the description on the back is going to clue you into what's on the inside. But if what's on the inside is vastly different from the story that was told to you before your purchase, well, now you've made a bad investment. Same thing when we are trying to decide what movie to watch. This is a time investment. Am I going to like this movie? Well, let me watch the trailer and see what it's about. We're going to be disappointed and probably click off if the movie doesn't have much to do with, or is quite different from the description. Same thing with the role of the story of the role, the mission, and the culture. You want to have that aligned with your leadership team as clearly, as closely as possible to what it's going to look like once that employee steps into the role. Otherwise, they could be looking to leave the organization, creating a recipe for turnover. So communication, align the story of the role with the mission and culture, and share that story so that you're attracting the right fit candidates. And then build a repeatable, structured hiring framework. Now, we do want to have flexibility. Sometimes we can move, shift steps in the interview process. Sometimes we can combine them, which can be recommended to keep that momentum going. Maybe we're at risk of losing a potential candidate if they've got another offer on the table. Maybe the hiring manager that would typically do the second step interview is going to be away on vacation. So we want to have somebody else step in. So we can certainly have some flexibility in the interview process, but what we don't want to do is skip over steps. So again, we can combine them, and then in a sense, it looks like and feels like it's less steps, but we're not skipping over any of the important key details and steps that we need to cover in the interview process. And you want to have that repeatable, structured framework throughout, and that's going to help you ensure that you make more of the right hires and faster. And then improve your communication. So this, again, communication for not just how you share your story, but you want to communicate effectively across the team, everybody who's involved in the interview process. Your leadership team, make sure that executive leadership and the hiring manager are in alignment with what we're looking for in the ideal candidate. Make sure that you're communicating consistently with your recruiter throughout the process, and make sure that you are consistently communicating with candidates too. And part of that communication, because that keeps your candidates engaged, and it keeps your recruiters engaged and working harder for you when they have that consistent feedback on candidates, what's working, what's not. And then you can also help, you can lean on your recruiter and your leadership team to help you vet out any potential challenges, hesitations, and also to help increase your confidences in a candidate. So share the feedback, and also give feedback to the candidate, even during the interview. Sometimes leaders will withhold negative feedback, and I get it. It could be a time consideration. Do I want to take the time here to share my concerns with the candidate, or do I just want to hold off on that, talk to the recruiter, talk to the leadership team later? But by taking that time to share with the candidate, this is a concern that I'm having, you're giving them an opportunity to work to overcome that hesitation right then. And so this, maybe they can't overcome it. And this is also good because it helps you, then you just saved time on your calendar from moving a candidate that's not a fit forward in the interview process. And you saved that candidate time too, so that they can refocus their attention to other priorities. But maybe they, with that opportunity to overcome the challenge, they're able to do that right then and there and adjust. And that shows that they're coachable, and this is going to increase your confidence in moving that candidate throughout the forward in the interview process. So very simple tips, all centered around process and communication, which, good news, you have control over both of those things. How you communicate, how often you communicate, and the process, implementing, figuring out the ideal steps for the right interview process for your organization that's going to help you attract, select, and ultimately retain the right talent. And again, just a reminder on a culture fit. I've seen this happen a lot where we have not the best hiring initiative. We have turnover on the back end because we were so excited in pursuing and ultimately hiring candidates that have the skills, and they've got the contacts, and they've got the wins on the board, even with the contacts that we're looking for. But culture is not a fit. And so then those candidates did not stick around. And hiring, it's not just about filling seats. It's about building a process that consistently attracts with the story that you're telling, selects with your process, your repeatable framework, and retains people who perform, who stay, and who ultimately are going to help elevate your company culture. My name's Amy Miller, and I help organizations do just that, work to craft and articulate and then share the true story of the role, so that you are attracting right fit candidates who want the story that you are telling, not just candidates that you want, but candidates who also want what you have to offer. And then I help leadership teams create a repeatable hiring process that is going to ultimately lead to lasting hires, increased retention rates, and strengthen interview design with effective interview questions that are going to help you more effectively vet talent. And then it also can support leaders with coaching and accountability to ensure follow through. And as we discussed, making a right hire can be expensive, but making the wrong hire much more expensive. So a lot of times, taking time to get systems and formulas and communication locked in place on the front end is later going to help save your organization so much in unnecessarily wasted time and dollars over the years. And if your organization is ready to help your leaders make lasting hires with less stress and save millions of dollars over time in unnecessary hiring cost losses, this is what I help leaders and executives do. I invite you to reach out. The links to my contact and my coaching and workshops are in the description. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.